before we get started, I just want to remind everybody that our diversity initiative competition, I don't think it's a competition, it's diversity initiative is open now. Check it out, submit. It's open, I think, until March 17th. Our own Max Tim is having his next class on March 23rd, which is the 10 categories of script evaluation. And that will be up on our events page soon. So make sure you're frequenting our event page to register for events. And yeah, if you guys need to practice your pitching or you want to talk about industry stuff or how to network or who to send your stuff out to, you guys can sign up for pitch practice or office hours with me on our site under our mentor section. Welcome everybody to our awesome ISA Presents with JaSheika and JaNeika James, who are epic storytellers and currently co-executive producers on the Peacock's Bel Air, which is getting a lot of buzz, right?
Absolutely.
Yes. Doing amazing. I haven't seen it yet, so I can't, I'm like not going to be like, oh my God, it's so good. But I'm very excited to see it. And it's on my schedule for this weekend. So who's seen it? Tell us in the chat. We are going to get started right away. I want to hear, okay, so first of all, wait, before I get started with questions, if you guys would like to learn everything about these two, get their book. It's called Living Double, and it's awesome and inspiring and will sort of make you feel like you're at home with these two, because they've been in your shoes, they've been where you're at, they know what it feels like, and you can get to where they're at too. So check out the book. The website is livingdoublebook.com, correct?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so first off, tell me about how you guys first came to realize, I guess, that you wanted to work in television, maybe not specifically as writers, but where did this love for TV come from?
You know, we were military brats. We lived in Germany when we were 4 years old with my mom, and our grandparents would send us VHS tapes because back then they only had like 2 or 3 channels. They were all German, and we didn't understand anything.
It was one channel. It was actually one channel. It was one channel, and we were because we shared a womb together. We were those kids who didn't necessarily like to play with other kids. We had each other, so
right.
We didn't want to go play outside. We just like to talk to each other and watch TV together, essentially.
So that sparked our obsession with TV, because our grandparents would send us all like the Saturday morning cartoons, all the
VHS
sitcoms, the NBC sitcoms back in the day, Golden Girls, Cosby Show,
Different World, just everything, Empty Nest, just everything that was on TV back in the late 80s. We had a tape up, essentially.
That's nice of somebody to send you all that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's an effort back in the day, you know, to like record it.
Absolutely. And so I think, you know, we always knew that we loved TV. I mean, we loved soap operas. My grandmother got us soap operas, and we loved talking about the storylines and everything that was going on.
As if they were real people.
As if they were
totally.
It actually annoyed my dad, because I think one time he thought we were talking about, he was like, who's this Victor Newman? Who are you? But we were just engrossed in television, you know, from a very young age. But it wasn't until we read a magazine.
We
were in high school. We loved Living Single, the TV show Living Single, that starred Queen Latifah and Erica Alexander and Kim Coles and Kim Fields. And I remember picking up an Essence magazine when we were in high school and reading about, you know, Yvette Lee Bowser, the sister behind Living Single. And it was the first time that, like, we saw, you know, that, you know, this young Black woman was responsible for being the first African-American woman to create and run her own TV series. But it was also like, a light bulb moment, because we knew that we had always been obsessed with television and obsessed with the stories, but we never, you know, knew that there was a way that you could be a part of it and not necessarily be in front of the camera, you know. Reading about Yvette, it just was kind of like, you know.
It was like, wow, we had no idea.
Yeah.
She's
you can be responsible for the words coming out of these people's mouths. Yeah, it was like, oh, okay, and look like us and do it. Oh, okay. So it was just a little spark of inspiration.
Yeah.
Seeing that.
And then fast forward years later, when we were in college, our first spring break, we were obsessed with Dawson's Creek. And we drove to Wilmington, North Carolina.
Yes, I want to hear that story because I read about it in your book, and I also loved Dawson's Creek. So I was a little bit envious reading that part of the book. I was like, but I mean, come on, that's awesome. So how did this happen? How did you guys get to go to Dawson's Creek and be extras?
Yeah, so those were the kind of TV watchers we were, right?
Yeah.
We were obsessed, and my sister over here would
I
figure
was
out
on
like
all the fan pages.
she would figure out she figured out where it was taped, and we were like, oh, we should go.
Let's go to Wilmington. So that was the first thing we did as freshmen in undergrad, is drive up to Wilmington. When we turned 18,
by ourselves.
My
mom, God bless her.
Yes.
I was like, what?
Our first spring break trip was to go drive up to Wilmington, which was hilarious. But it was great. I think that's the one thing that I regret about our book. I didn't get our picture with Joshua Jackson, who plays Pacey.
Oh.
I didn't get to put that picture in the book, but we were definitely there. But it was one of those things, we were anytime we basically were like, hey, like, this is what we want to do, we kind of just like jump into it. And that was, an example of another seed being planted, or light bulb moment.
Because we had just went originally just to see the sets, to tour the sets. And then somebody, other fans there told us, oh yeah, but you can be extras. And we're like, oh, okay, cool, let's try that.
Yeah. And so we played up the twin thing because we hadn't like twins since we were like 5. But we got the same hairstyles. And of course, that was the thing that kind of made us stand out to, the producers on set, they were like, or, the 80s. They were like, of course, we got to have the twins. We have to have the twins be extras. And so it was a really cool experience that, we were able to be on set, be around people in production, with and also discover that the writers on that show were set in LA. So they worked from Los Angeles, even though the show was shot in Wilmington. Right. So I always talk about that as like a seed planting moment of us just being immersed in the experience, not realizing that that was going to play a role in what our own experience would be as writers, Right. I say to encourage people to every experience that you're going through is somehow going to play a role in some way in what you end up doing, in your professional careers. Even our first jobs outside of college, we were working in sales. And nobody tells you that as a writer, that's all you're doing. You're selling.
Right. I know.
Even in the writer's room, you're selling your ideas.
Yeah.
Get it on the board.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Selling yourself, selling your ideas. Okay, so you guys went to college and you studied other things, correct?
Yeah. So
why? Let's first talk about the why.
Mm-hmm.
Why did you not study television, writing, production, and went in those other directions?
Because TV is a dream. Nobody tells you that TV is something that you could, especially not our parents. It's not something that we had, in our family experience to even look at and say, hey, oh, this is something that you can do. The creative arts never feels stable. My dad, I went to college as a nutrition major. I was a Bill Gates scholar. So my school was basically paid for off of my first semester at the University of Florida, because Bill Gates supplemented my whole education for studying the sciences. So anything that was being a doctor, being a lawyer, being an engineer, any
like guaranteed income.
Yeah.
Income, right?
Yeah. We were, part of the first kids in our family to actually go to college. And so anything that felt like financial stability was where we were being geared towards, Yeah. And so this idea of like, writing for TV, it was like, that's a fantasy.
Yeah.
But I was at the University of Florida before my sister. She joined me 2 years later. And I remember she was like, oh yeah, I just registered for my major. I'm, studying, telecommunications with an emphasis in TV production. And I was like, what? And I'm older than her. I'm an hour older than her. I'm the first. So it was
much older and wiser.
Right. But it was the first time that I looked at her and I was like, I mean, I love TV too.
Right.
You know, I want to do that. So it was the first time that I actually took a moment and decided to follow my sister, because I was over here being a nutrition major, but then decided, you know what, I like TV as well. And I decided that I wanted to go where my heart was. It wasn't that I wasn't doing great in school. I was an excellent student, but the passion was in what we grew up loving together, which was television, and the possibility of becoming a writer, you know, in television. It just was so invigorating, so exciting, you know. So yeah, so I decided to take a leap.
Broke my dad's heart.
Broke my dad's heart. You know, my dad, I think up until, and I'll be honest with you guys, it was a real, up until I got staffed on Empire, my dad was still talking about me going to dental school eventually. So he didn't let that dream go until he started to see the success.
My dad was the same.
Yeah,
I was an engineering major, and then I straight up left and moved to LA, and he was like, what is happening?
Right. And it kind of throws them off. And I think, you know, we talk about it in the book, just about how, you know, I think a lot of times, you know, people in our business or aspiring writers or creatives can be a little thrown when it feels like the people who are closest to you aren't necessarily supporting your dreams. And I always say, it's never about you and your talent and your ability to pursue these dreams. It's always about their own fears, you know, and it's because they love you. It's because they care for you. But there's ways to not necessarily let their fears impede upon, you know, your success. So
or let other opinions box you in either, right?
Yeah. So I always am like, don't take it personal.
Right.
But just keep on thriving, and then eventually when you show up,
they'll come around.
They'll come around. Exactly.
Okay, so after college, then where did you guys go, and how did you both of you start in the industry?
So for me, I went off to work at a job. I was working at a call center, and I ended up going off to work at that job in a promoted position in Tampa. And I did that for a year. And until I had applied for film school, and I applied for, and I talk about this in the book too, I applied for film school at FSU, and I applied for this production associates program at ABC Disney in LA. And I remember driving to my interview in Tallahassee for FSU, and I didn't get out the car.
You know, it's crazy. I didn't even know about this experience until we wrote this book. So I just found out about this a couple years ago myself.
So honestly, it was my fear of just being afraid of, like, you know what I'm saying? Like interviewing, telling them what I want to do, feeling unprepared, feeling whatever. And I went there, and I just sat in the car for however and just cried my eyes out. I ended up getting accepted to interview for the program, the production associate program out here in LA. And I came out and I interviewed, and I got the call that I did not get the job. I didn't make
and that's like a reoccurring theme for you guys a little bit up until
very much so. Very much so. Story of our lives.
These setbacks that are really set ups that you don't realize are experiences that are playing a role in, you know, your future success. So we'll get back to that.
Yeah, we'll circle back to those. Okay, so you came to LA and you interviewed and you didn't get it. So then what did you do?
So I remember I was out here with my mom, and my mom was like, well, just call them and get some feedback. Call and get some feedback. So when I called the lady back, Jean Hester, and asked her, hey, you know, thank you so much. I know I didn't get it, but you give me some feedback and let me know. And she was like, yeah, JaSheika, she said, you were great, you know, like, you know, whatever. But she said, there's just some people who, you know, like sell themselves more personality wise, whatever. I said, okay, thank you so much. No, you know,
the personalities just popped a little bit more than yours.
You know, I was just nervous, you know, it's my first time, and you know, whatever. So, you know, I'm a shy child, whatever. So I was like, okay, cool. But then 2 weeks later, I get a call from Jean saying that somebody from the program dropped out, and that I was, that's what she told me. She told me on the phone, I was the number one runner-up, the first one. So my first runner-up slot became a position. So if I could get there within 2 weeks, then they would be glad to accept me. And so that was my foot in the door. I ran and took it, flew away, got away from my sister, my family, and just took a chance. And when I say everything, when it was meant to be, how everything just falls in place, like even finding a place to live, finding my roommate online, and you know, being right down the street from my job, so that if I didn't have a car, I could walk. You know,
that's lucky.
Yeah, very, very lucky.
Wow.
Right? Serious alignment. So
Yeah.
I was so thankful. And that was how I got my foray into this business. It was like an apprenticeship, a year-long apprenticeship on the studio side, where you kind of like are covering all the show. I had no idea, just to be clear, what I was coming out to do. I thought,
Sure.
oh, I'm going to go work for ABC News, not knowing I'm going to work for the studio that produced all the primetime television shows for ABC and other various networks, but mainly for ABC. And it was really cool because I came at a time of what we call the golden age, right? It was right when they had just finished producing the pilots for Desperate Housewives, Lost, and Grey's Anatomy. And Grey's Anatomy is still on the air. So,
So were you on the lot?
I was on the lot.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what was that like when you first like?
It was
those are like amazing moments.
No, it really is. No, because you still remember how that feeling of how excited you were. You know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, so-and-so shot here. Oh my gosh, it's Jennifer Garner with her pink wig. From Alien. You know, they were shooting Alias then. It was amazing. It was, yeah. And I have to
magical moment.
Thank you for reminding me of that, because I have to remember that, you know, sometimes we're in this business and we have a tendency to get jaded, but you remember, this is why I do this. This is what this is the feeling that we want other people to have, you know?
Yes. So my story is a little different. When Sheika came out here to work as a production associate for ABC, I went to grad school at Syracuse University. I got my master's degree in television, radio, and film. Did not realize I was going to a private school until day one at orientation. Realized that my 1 year of a master's education was going to cost me $40,000, which happened to be more than my entire undergraduate education. So that was a surprise for me. And I had to have a heart-to-heart moment with one of my professors. I said, I cannot come out of this program as a struggling artist like the rest of my peers. I can barely afford to stay here. I need to be able to get into this business as soon as I leave. Right. So me and that professor, a guy by the name of Richard Dubin, we strategized, you know, on a way that could put me in front of people so that I ultimately had a job as soon as I graduated. And so I did a thesis project and I was able to fly out to LA to interview several women, because I did a thesis on the African-American female influence in television, which was really eye-opening, because I had always knew that I wanted to become a writer and knew of different showrunners like Yvette, but then there were more, you know, coming after her. I think Mara Brackett-Keel had Girlfriends on at the time. Shonda had Grey's Anatomy. And so I wanted to interview all of these women, and I interviewed Winifred Hervey, you know, who worked on Golden Girls and In the House with Ella Kuch and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I'm just laughing at like thinking back on that. I interviewed Ava DuVernay, who was publicist, you know, of the DuVernay agency, you know, at the time, not even a director, and just different women, Black female executives and casting directors, and just realized there's just a broad scope of ways to be involved and contribute to this business that I wasn't necessarily aware of. But the one person that I ultimately got to interview, that it took me 6 months to track her down because she had a really good assistant who was a great gatekeeper, was Yvette Lee Bowser, you know, who the woman who inspired us to even
from the beginning, right?
From the beginning, exactly. So I had a phone interview with Yvette Lee Bowser. It lasted about 3 hours, which when I think back on it is really insane. When you think about
that is insane.
It's insane, right? Exactly. We just totally connected. We were talking about TV. Our TV sensibility was just, it was great. And, you know, at the time she was running the show, she was running half and half on UPN. She had 2 children and a husband. And so the fact that she was able to give me so much time was really incredible. And after we finished talking, you know, she gave me her email address, you know, to ask if I had any follow-up questions. And I remember calling my sister after that interview and screaming about how I just got Yvette Lee Bowser's email address. And I'm so excited. And I, you know, the day after, I always tell people, never be afraid to shoot your shot with somebody, especially if you have their contact information. Because that's exactly what I did. I ended up emailing her and letting her know that I needed to get 3 more credits for an internship. I would love to take an opportunity to work for her. And that's how I became an intern on Half and Half. So that was my, step. A year after my sister had been in LA, I moved out here and I started interning at the Radford lot, for half an PN. So
there was two things that each one of you said that just sticks out to me in terms of like getting in the business is, JaSheika, you said that you called for feedback.
yes.
Yeah.
So that's a really important thing. That's on the same lines of you reaching out the next day, asking for what you wanted to get to that next place. Like sometimes you have to go outside of that comfort zone for yourself and just go, okay, it's now or never. And if I wait, I think I got my first job. One of my first jobs is because I was probably the only person or maybe two people who sent a thank you note after an interview. And it brought me to the top.
Yes.
Well, if you're going to do that, we'll bring you back in.
Exactly.
So it's like sometimes those little touches,
Yes.
like asking for feedback and then you're in their brain,
Exactly.
or you just had that long conversation and then you went, hey, this is what I'm looking for.
Yes.
Can you help me? And they're like, yeah.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And it's a scary place to be in, but I always say just
Totally.
leap past the fear. And like you said, it's the little things that just make you kind of stand out, the rest, which is so important. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So you're both in LA, but
Yes.
you're not writing. Let's
Yeah.
be clear about that. You're not writers.
It was a journey.
Let's go through that journey of where you guys started, kind of like how you were going through that. And there was an important part of the book that you talked about, that you never spoke up. And this may be JaSheika, you write, maybe that you never really spoke up, that you actually wanted to write.
Yes.
And so let's talk about that too, that moment where you finally were like, all right.
Huge lesson learned. So I ended up getting these jobs after I did my apprenticeship, my production associate apprenticeship. I ended up going on to work on various different shows. I worked on Desperate Housewives. I worked on Dexter. And Dexter was the show. Just be clear, I wasn't working in a writing capacity. I was working, I think, in accounting, like an accounting assistant or something. And I used to always go and bond with the executive producer's assistant. We bonded over soaps, our love of soaps. We would be talking about Carly and Sunny on General Hospital and, Alexis and so I remember it was towards the end of the season. I think the show had wrapped shoot, or the writer's room had definitely wrapped. And they have been almost wrapped shooting. And she was like, JaSheika, she's like, I hear you, you're so passionate about, soaps and stuff, but you're working in accounting. Is that what you really want to do? That can't be what you really want to do. And I said, honestly, no, it's not what I want to do. I actually want to write. And she said, oh, JaSheika, I wish you would have said something to me earlier. Clyde loves to mentor people. If you would have told me, he would have let you come into the writer's room and see what it was like. So I remember sitting there thinking like, oh my God, damn. Like, because we were coming up in a time where, you allegedly had to be solely focused on what it was that job that you were doing. And if you want to do anything else, how dare you, so
right.
That was my biggest lesson learned, to release any type of fear around letting people know what you want to do, because you never know who could potentially help you or who's willing to at least get you closer to the door that you're trying to.
Yeah. And I always tell people, be good at your job, like the job that you actually are working on, be good at it, be responsible, to the people who are depending on you to do a good job, but don't be fearless when it comes to being, clear on what it is that you ultimately want to do. People don't be vocal. Yeah. Because if people don't know,
vocal, but respectful.
Exactly.
And not like annoying. There's a definite fine line, but yes, be bold. Be bold and let the fear go.
Exactly.
So I just have a question before we get into the rest. During this time that you guys were working various other jobs in the production space, were you guys writing, or was that not even like at a place?
Always writing.
Yeah,
always writing.
Okay.
I'll tell you, my internship with Yvette on Half and Half, she worked with a writer named Jamie Wooten, who used to be Mark Cherry's writing partner. They wrote on Golden Girls together. And the best piece of advice that he gave me was, and it was so simple and so like, it's kind of funny, kind of shady. He's like, writers write. writers write. Like writers aren't talking about writing. Writers aren't, saying that they aspire to be a writer. Like real writers write. And I think that was something that was always in the back of my mind when we were working, is that we were always writing. And the reality is, and I'll be honest with you, it's difficult. It's difficult when you're working PA jobs or working writer's assistant jobs, and you're in the room, you're working these long hours, and you're trying to do what you can to kind of pay the bills. LA is an expensive place to live. It's very difficult. But I think that you just have to push yourselves to kind of like get, either wake up early before you go to work and like, get a page down, get something down, or after and on the weekends.
I was gonna say we often find ourselves sacrificing our weekends, right? And
our social lives. We didn't have social lives.
Yeah. We did. Our friends were like, we're gonna go out and just okay, cool. We're gonna write. Yeah.
But were you guys writing together or separately at that point?
Both.
Okay.
Both. Which I think is also important. I think it's important to have an individual creative voice, but we have a shorthand with each other that has worked, since we were teenagers. I always laugh about this, writing our first That's So Raven spec script in Microsoft Word. But it's something that, we always had to have that in practice. I think, just to tell you about our portfolio when we were coming up as assistants, we wrote a Old Christine spec, we wrote a Modern Family spec.
That's So Raven.
We wrote that wasn't why we were
right.
That was pre-working. That was pre-final draft days, right?
Yeah.
What did we wrote a Scandal spec,
a Grey's Anatomy.
Grey's Anatomy. Yeah, I think just to put this out there, it's important to kind of have a portfolio, not only of original work, because that's what's more accepted now, because people want to read and kind of hear your voice. But, when we were coming up, it was important to, just kind of show that you could actually like get the tone of the voice of the show. Exactly. So we were writing comedy specs and hour-long specs, just to show the wide range of, our skill set. So, yeah.
I remember when I was working at ABC, I went to my boss, encouraged me to use my resources at the job. So I would talk to the various creative executives. And I remember talking to Channing Dungey, and she was just like, her best advice was build your portfolio, And I was like, I thank you for that. She was just like, people are going to want to see what you have. They're going to love it. And they're going to want to see what else do you have.
Right.
And just, I want to just touch on something during that time. I always tell people, your tongue is very powerful. We did not realize it at the time. I moved out here in 2005. I remember being in an apartment in Burbank, and me and my sister saying, we're going to give ourselves 10 years. If in 10 years we're not in somebody's room, we're going to go home and figure something out,
Right.
At the time, we never had a plan B. We have always been singularly focused on becoming writers. I always tell people, like, and it may not be good advice, don't have a plan B, for me, it's a plan to not, it's a plan for failure. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have a backup, but literally 10 years almost to the day in 2015 is when I got staffed on Empire. And I'm like, if I would have known then how powerful my words were, I would have said in 2 years instead of 10. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for the 10-year journey, because it allowed us to.
We appreciate where we are.
Yeah. And I struggle builds character, right?
Right. It makes us work that much harder to maintain. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And also appreciate, the various positions on a show. That was one of the things that we were able to do, is really grow up as assistants, but also really understand department heads. She worked in construction, accounting, finance. I was, in every department on a set, in casting, in costumes, in the office, in the writer's room. It's important to really understand like all of the people who are contributing to your vision of a show, because then you respect and appreciate them, and not necessarily look at them as transitional actors on, your thing.
Right. Okay. So let's continue the story of, okay, so where were you guys like before you came together? Which one? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Who was
writing on shows and who wasn't?
So I was writing on.
Okay.
Yes. Before we came together, because we were always working together, but I ended up getting staffed as a writer's assistant on Revenge.
Which was crazy to me because I was the one who was working under Showrunners. I worked for Yvette Lee Bowser for 6 years. Then I went on to work for Jen Crittenden, Gabby Allen, and Sharon Horgan for 2 years at ABC Studios. So I was working directly under Showrunners. The whole time we were always in development, unfortunately, and we never got a show on the air for me to get staffed. And then I remember I was working for Gabby and Jen, and my sister got staffed on Revenge. I'm like, what is happening? What is going on?
She was hating. She was hating.
You can tell. I think she's still hating.
Yeah, again, I'm like, I'm the firstborn, so I'm just like, what is why? Like, it should be me. I'm working directly for these comedy showrunners. But so what I did, I was like, okay, my sister just got staffed on Revenge after working at the studio for years. What do I need to do? So I decided to kind of diversify my resume a little bit, and decided to get some experience in 1 hour scripted television. So that's what I went on to work at VH1. Which again, I always talk about these eye-opening, light bulb seed planting moments. It was my first time working on the buyer side. I worked with an incredible woman and producer named Maggie Molina, who was an executive, but she was also a producer. She kind of had a pod at VH1. So she was the head of scripted over there, but she also was a creative executive producer who didn't have a non-writing executive producer over shows like Single Ladies and Hit the Floor. And she did all the movies over there, like the TLC film and Drumline 2 and a show called Hindsight. So what was really eye-opening about that experience is like sitting on the buyer side, you get to see the different writers who are coming in to pitch shows for VH1. And I was the one on her desk who had to read all the scripts and actually sit in on the pitches. And it was literally like I had held writing and getting a seat at the table so high above my own self, my own skill set. And in reading and seeing everybody who was coming in, I was like, yes, people, I'm here. Here. And sometimes you have to see that. You have to be able to have the perspective of like, no, you are capable of doing this. And it was demystified a bit, which actually really helped.
Yeah.
So after working with her, is when I applied for the Fox Writing Intensive program, which we'll get into later.
Yeah, but that's the biggest thing that I would say, like for all this screenwriters on here, like don't ever feel like you're so far away from actually doing it. Like you're only a damn good script away. You know what I mean? Like it's just not, it's not as far away as we would present in our heads.
At all.
Right. Yeah. You're looking at a speed bump, not a mountain.
Exactly.
Yes,
Exactly.
That was one of my best advice things. Like, why are you looking at this speed bump in front of you like it's a giant mountain? Like you're not climbing Everest. You got to ride your bike over this bump. And I'm like,
exactly.
JaSheika, you were on Revenge. And in your book, you tell an interesting story about sort of what happened with Revenge. Give us the Cliff's Notes version of that and sort of like that trajectory of what happened on Revenge and then how that brought you, then you guys soon after that came together, right?
Yeah.
Ish.
Yes. So when I first got writer's assistant job on Revenge, I was really exciting times. It was amazing because I remember in that script and I love Mike Kelly. I love his writing so much. And I ended up interviewing, got my position as the writer's assistant season 1. Season 2, I got my first script. And season 3, I was staffed. In season 4, my option wasn't renewed, which is if writers speak is basically you've been fired basically from your job. And I remember being so devastated because I'm like, oh my God, like here I am, I finally, get my seat at the table and now I'm being kicked out. Like, what is this? What's happening? Right. But when I first got staffed, our agent told us, he said, it's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
Right now, JaSheika, you're in the lead, but eventually you guys are going to come back together. And so I ended up calling one of my good girlfriends, Wendy Calhoun. She was on Revenge with me as well, telling her about it. And she told me about an opportunity on Empire. So I'm really excited, right? I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah. Oh my gosh, I read that script. Love that script. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they picked that show up because I didn't think it was made for network TV. But yes, I would love to come and interview. And then I was talking to her as if it was like a staffing position. And she was like, oh no, we've already staffed everybody. I'm telling you for like a support position.
Mhm.
And I remember like thinking like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll send you my resume or whatever. But I could have easily let my ego and my pride get in the way, because I was feeling some kind of way, because I was just like, wait a minute, I've taken a step up, so I'm gonna take, 2 steps back.
What will everybody think?
That's exactly what my head was. I was caring about what other people would think and how, it would look. And I just remember thinking, well, I let me just take the interview. I went to interview. I met with Eileen Chaikin, and she presented me with the opportunity of being able to be in the room, even though I was interviewing to be a script coordinator. I know you have experience on Revenge. Would love to hear your voice, your thoughts, have you in the room. And I said, okay, yeah, I'll do that. Because to me, it was better to have access to be around other writers, you know what I mean? Like really, as opposed to, getting another job even further away from where I wanted to be.
Yeah.
Right.
So I ended up doing that, and for season 1 script coordinating. And then we got into the Fox program.
We got into the Fox writing program, and our agent, who told us that it was a marathon, not a sprint, ended up submitting us together. Unbeknownst to us. So we got into that program together, and then we were staff.
Was this one you got into, or were you?
Yeah.
Okay. So this one you actually were like, hey, we got him. We're not alternates.
Yes.
Actually. Okay, good.
Yeah.
No, but you know what? We were alternate. We again see another example of like not looking at, becoming an alternate as like, meaning that you didn't make it. Because I remember when we interviewed for the Fox Writing Intensive,
We were alternates.
I know, but I remember feeling like, oh, we did that. We're gonna get in, and found out that we were alternates, but not even stressing about the fact that we were alternates, because literally a week later we got a call that we were being bumped up into the program. So it totally worked out. And that was, I feel like it was a blind faith moment because of the fact that you had already been through something like that. And so we got into the program, and then we got staffed together in the second season of Empire, and literally our career has gone up since then, no looking back. And even looking at JaSheika's step backwards from Revenge, I think she was like, I've already been a staff writer. I'm going to be a script coordinator. What is this going to mean for the trajectory of my career? We worked on Empire from season 2 all the way to the end of this show. And after our first option was completed, we ended up being bumped up. So twice,
Double
right?
bump.
We got double.
Yeah, you went from staff writer to supervising producer, right?
Exactly. And so it's almost like she didn't even miss a year. You know what I mean?
I'm exactly where we're supposed
to be. Exactly. So look, everything always works out. I think a lot of times we find ourselves questioning why we've been rejected from certain jobs, or why did it take us 10 years to get to the first job, right? But I think it happens for a reason, the path that you're on, and just trusting that you are where you're meant to be. And the experiences that you're having until you get to where you think you should be are for the greater purpose. So,
right. Well, let's talk about being in the room on Empire, those first, when you were a staff writer. I know a lot of our writers are always wondering what it's like in the room. What was that experience like for you guys? What was the hustle like in there? What was the environment for you? What was exciting? What was stressful?
Yeah. So can I say, because it was my first staff experience, because she had already been already.
Okay.
I'm like, but it was wild.
It was wild though, and it's a different beast. And I always say I will always cherish that experience. It was incredible time. To be on that show. She was on it the first season when the show had this meteoric rise, unlike anything that has ever been seen in television. And I just remember telling people, like, I don't think any other staff writer. I came onto the show. We were on panels, at the American Black Film Festival all over the country. We were speaking in Los Angeles we were being interviewed in the Hollywood Reporter. We were featured in Essence magazine as a room. There was so much media, not only around that show and the cast, but also the people who were responsible for taking part in telling those stories. So it was a very magical time. It was very, very special to be a part of, especially as a first time writer at the table. I was like, wow, this is pretty incredible. It's a pretty fun ride.
Yeah. For me, yeah, I say wild because it was really cool. Coming into a room, first of all, you know, I had been in the Revenge Writers Room, and although it was diverse, it was not diverse like this, like with so many, you know what I'm saying, African Americans, but also too, I'm sorry, African American writers, but also diverse
of
in experience,
experience,
right? Like
right.
people
authors,
came, they were authors, poets,
Mm.
they were
Playwrights.
editors and chiefs of like the Source magazine.
Yeah.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like it was a realm of not just coming from TV. You know,
Yeah,
saying,
it was just the
screenwriters.
diversity of like the background experience of the writers who were contributing to it. It wasn't
Which-
just see all TV people,
which
is cool.
which I think was the benefit of the show, right? Because
That's the secret sauce. I think that's what made it really special.
And pretty groundbreaking, I think, right?
yeah.
Because if you don't, even with Lee and Danny, you know, their experience, which was what was really cool about them, they didn't know the rules of TV. So if you don't know the rules, it's very easy for you to break them, which I think is what made the show stand out in that moment in time. You know what I mean? So I always tell people, like, yes, obviously it's important to kind of understand the rules, but you know, sometimes, you know, you have some leeway to kind of just try some new things, you know.
Did you guys speak up a lot and pitch ideas a lot, or were you pretty quiet in those first days?
The first season, I think, you know, I mean, you can speak.
I'll speak to that, yeah, because it was an experience for me, because I was like, I remember complaining to her because I was like, we just spent all day and we put a whole bunch of stuff on the board and we come in the next day and it's like none of that exists. I don't understand. Decide what was happening yesterday. And it was an experience for me learning that as a staff writer, this is a collaborative process and it's ever evolving and always changing. There's never an end, a finality to what it is, even when you're shooting it. Like, you know who has the final say? The editor.
Right.
You know, and so it was. I had to get used to that. The kind of like the cleaning of the slate, essentially, until, you know, as a room, and really the showrunner really found like, no, this is it, you know.
I myself, when I was my first time staff writer on Revenge, I had a problem with speaking up. So I would like write my ideas down on paper because, you know, I had a bit of a perfection complex, right? And it wasn't, because you would see seasoned writers and they would pitch and it was like effortlessly and it would be so clear what they're pitching. I'm like, how did you come up with that? Not realizing they've been doing this for years.
It's a muscle.
So of course they're skilled with coming up with ideas, knowing where characters are going to, you know what I'm saying? Off the cuff pitches.
Yeah.
And so I say that to say, you know, when you do have your first staff job, don't be a pitch without shame. That was the best advice Mark Perry from Revenge gave that advice to me. He said, pitch without shame. Let me just tell you, pitch without shame, because you never know, even if it's your worst, if it's a bad idea, we could still pull something from it and build off of that.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Your voice is always important in a room. It always matters. And we were lucky to be, we've always been lucky to be on shows that don't adhere to hierarchy. I don't have that experience of respecting, and as a staff writer, don't speak unless you're spoken to. I don't believe in that. What was really cool about the Empire Room was that everybody was kind of on an equal playing field, whether you were a staff writer or, you know,
PAs,
a PA, a writer's assistant could pitch just as much as, you know, any other writer.
A good idea is a good idea.
Exactly.
Well, that's amazing.
Exactly.
I love that.
And that's how it should be. So I like to do that to people so that we, as we're coming up in the business and becoming showrunners, we can create that type of environment for writers. Yeah.
Well, all the writers are lucky to have you guys out there. Okay, so after Empire, then what did you guys move on to? And then where are you currently?
Okay, yes. So after Empire, we went on to True Story with Kevin Hart on Netflix. That was one of our best room experiences because of our showrunner. And yeah, it was really cool. We ended up, you know, COVID hit, so it kept our room in-person experience shorter than we anticipated, but we had a lot of fun.
Oh yeah, it was great. It was
from there we ended up going off onto Gossip Girl. The reboot
on HBO Max.
Yeah, that was really cool. That was our full-time Zoom room experience, and we did a lot in terms of like
came in at the end of season 1 and did season 2, which is shooting right now. They're shooting season 2 right now, so you guys will see that this summer. So that was an incredible experience working at HBO Max. And then we went into right from, you know, a reimagining of Gossip Girl into another big series reimagining, which is Bel-Air, which is the current reimagining of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Morgan Cooper, incredible director, had this vision that went viral in 2019 that caught Will Smith's eye, you know, this dark and grittier version of, you know, if we actually explore, you know, the theme song, you know, the Fresh Prince, like what does that actually look like? And, you know, just exploring the Black experience, but, you know, if I'm being real specific, the variety of the Black male experience, a kid coming from, you know, West Philadelphia to the luxury of, you know, Bel-Air and Los Angeles, you know, big dreams.
Well, I mean, I hear about it daily about Bel-Air, and it's really exciting. Yeah. I mean, it's just really exciting. It's always, it's lovely to see something. I don't know if lovely is the right word, but it's like invigorating to see something, you know, in a new way. And you know, when we heard the news of like, oh, they're reimagining Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like, well, how are you going to do that? Why?
Yeah,
why mess with a good thing? But it's totally different. But it still has that same core, of the song of like the origin. So congratulations to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And it was after the Super Bowl, right? I didn't watch the Super Bowl.
Yes, it totally premiered after the Super Bowl. And
huge.
It's been really cool to just see the response. And I think, you know, everybody involved was really nervous because the Fresh Prince is such a huge part of our collective, you know, upbringing. And not even just, you know, I think people of our generation, but like, I feel like because of all the reruns that are on right now, like, I feel like there's a whole new generation that has been exposed, you know, to this. So it's been really cool to see how much people are actually really enjoying it. And not expecting to actually like enjoy. It's like, oh, okay, actually it's pretty cool. You guys did a really dope job. So
okay, so now I'm going to get to the sort of like the nitty-gritty stuff that all the writers always want to know. So what is the biggest lesson that the both of you have learned moving your way up in all of those different positions that you have taken with you as you are, you know, up at the level that you're at? What do you always remember that you're bringing to your space? And you kind of talked about a little bit, but let's just refresh that again and kind of get those little nuggets.
I would say that never take anything personally. You know, for us, we used to get really emotional.
Very.
You know, like, you know, if our pitches weren't accepted, or, you know, like if, you know, like get rewritten in the room, you know, all types of different things.
With time and experience, you realize you become a little less detached, you know, emotionally, which is actually helpful, because I think sometimes it can, you know, impact or impede on your creative process, you know, and just like I said earlier, the best, I guess, kind of metaphor for it is just what I said, like coming in every day and seeing a clean board after we had already filled up a board from the day before used to frustrate me, but it's the ever evolving like wheel, you know, you're always churning out new stuff, and to understand that that's just the nature of television, right? It's fast moving. It's deadline heavy, and it's continuously evolving. Don't necessarily be so attached, you know, to, you know, one thing or the other, and then you can keep on churning out material that you need to.
But I want to be clear, maintain your passion.
Yes.
Maintain your passion for what it is that you do. It's our passion and our excitement for what we get to possibly see on the screen. Is what keeps us going. So
absolutely. And I would say, we like to talk about this, being people of integrity.
You don't have
I'm going to say we are so few and far between in this business. That's just me keeping it real, guys. Okay. There are a lot of people who are afraid, and it's, you don't knock the ones who are not in integrity, because it's their fear that overpowers, you know, their actions. But when you are somebody who's able to take accountability, not only for the wins, but also for the losses and the screw ups, you stand out, because a lot of people are not willing to put themselves on the line in that way. And I always say, you know, at the end of the day, you know, what's the worst thing to happen? You can lose a job, or somebody says no. Okay. There will be more. There will be more opportunities always.
I think, you know, easier said than done, right?
Sure.
if you get your first position, you're like, oh my gosh, I finally made it, I'm here. I think having the experience of not being asked back to a show, you know, or knowing now, like, yeah, we get to pick and choose where we want to be, like that comes with time, but also do not be afraid of it, because you got here, you got to this position, you're definitely going to be able to maintain and go further. Yeah. When she says don't be afraid of walking away because it doesn't sit with you properly, do not be afraid, because it means that there's something bigger, better coming your way.
Yeah.
Right. And then what do you guys look for when you are hiring or taking ideas from new writers who maybe haven't been staffed or are, you know, those newbie people that are hungry and trying to get out there? Like, what are you guys looking for in new writers? And how does a writer get currently in this way that TV are working? And there's just a million shows now, so many. How does somebody get their shot? You know,
the best way to get your shot working with us is to make our lives easier, right? So and that's that's how we always maintain, even when we're staffed ourselves on the show. How do we make the showrunner's job easier? How can I pitch, you know, stories, or make sure that I show up my first drafts? You know what I'm saying? Nobody's expecting, the showrunner has their vision and their voice, you know, of the show. They're not expecting you to save the show, but I want you to have a great first draft that I can work off of and be like, oh yeah, you inspired me. Okay, great. I know what I'm doing.
Exactly. And be solutions oriented. You know, when there's story bumps or any issues or problems, we're always looking for writers who are not necessarily are the first ones to point out the problems, but if we always, Yvette Bowser used to say, you know, criticism without credit. So like what you want to do is like, oh, I know this is problem, but hey, what if we did this?
Have a solution.
How can we address it? Anybody who is a troubleshooter as a writer, I think is like a good player to have on your team. And also just people who, you know, have a voice, you know, and are not afraid to use it. You know, when you're looking for hiring writers, you want people who are just unapologetically like pitching. Boldly pitching.
Don't be afraid to share, because I think sometimes
we are hired literally for our
opinions. Yeah, for your
our opinions. Do not be afraid to give it. It's like, I'm so grateful that we were able to be raised, and I say raised in a room where everybody was on an equal playing field, because I don't believe in a hierarchy. I'm not hiring somebody to come in and sit and be quiet. That's not, you're not here to stare at the walls or the Zoom.
Right.
The computer screen.
Yeah.
No, let's talk.
I was gonna say, just going back to like being fearful of saying the wrong thing. That's what the room is for. You're just so that you can build and be comfortable with continuing to speak.
Right. So do you guys hire writers through only like agents and manager recommendations? Do you ever go to something like the Fox Writing Program? Do you recommend things like that for people to enter and try to get in that way?
Yes. It's not only through agents and managers. We're always, you know, vetting people through other friends who have worked with other people. But the programs I think are so important. I just want to talk to everybody and encourage everybody to apply for them. Just FYI, we applied to several programs before we got into Fox. We applied to Nickelodeon. We applied to ABC several times. We applied to NBC. Like, there are so many rejections that we've had. So just FYI, it's something that like Jamie Wooten told me, writers write. Even if you get rejected, you're going to keep on writing. And I think that's one of the.
But even with the rejection in those, your name's in there. So it's like, even when you do it, like your name keeps coming up and you keep getting better every time. And then it just like, they remember, oh yeah, this person, that person, and
exactly. They totally remember you, because I remember we were in the Fox Writing Program and we met with the CBS Writing Program, and the head of their program recognized us from our names, you know, from applying years prior. So people, they know who you are, and it's important to get your name out there. It's a network building opportunity. And what's really cool about the writer community is like, as big as it may seem, it's actually really small. It's a really nice community that supports each other. And like, once you get in, you're in there, you know. So I just feel like it's just really important to continue to build your network and have yourself out there, so that there's more opportunity for people to know you, to be able to request, you know, you to submit your work for potential staffing.
Excellent. I'm going to save that last question of like your final, like, little tips and tricks or anything like that for the end, because I'm going to jump to the Q&A
Yeah.
and we're going to go through and see if we can answer as many of these as we can. So if anyone has any questions right now that we didn't talk about that are like burning in your brain, put them in the Q&A real quick and we'll try to get to them. So we'll just try to hustle through these. Betty is asking, hi, Betty. I feel like I'm on a radio. Hi, Betty. Welcome. Do you think, and we were just talking about this before we started, do you think it's impossible to be a TV writer if you don't live in LA?
Nope. Not with today's world.
It is not impossible. We were just talking about this. I was saying how the pandemic has obviously been awful for various reasons.
It's changed
But
the
what
game.
is really incredible in our business is the access that has been created now that we can sit across the world and talk to each other over Zoom. I really love that because there's going to be just the diversity of voices that can contribute to all the shows that we're watching now, because you don't necessarily have to be in a room on a studio lot in Los Angeles. You literally could be anywhere in the world writing for a TV show. And I'm so excited about what is going to develop as a result of that. So,
and, soaps have been doing this for years. They got this a long time
Yeah,
ago. They've been here.
All
That's
over the
true.
country.
That's very true. They're all over the place.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to combine two of these questions. One is, do you have resume advice? And then Sharon is asking portfolio advice. So advice on both of those.
Okay, so regarding Sharon's question, I know that was from when I was saying build your portfolio. So, when I got that advice, she was telling me to build my scripts, right? Build my portfolio, my writing portfolio in terms of like the amount of scripts that I had completed and done.
And is it still, do you write those specs of current shows still, or is it more so leaning towards your own original?
It's more so original, but I wouldn't tell people to shy away from scripts. There are some writers who only read specs. Courtney Kemp, who runs the Power Universe, she reads specs. She does not read original material. So I say like,
she doesn't read original material.
I'm not gonna say
she prefers specs.
right. So what I will say is, like I just, if there's a show that's like really incredible, like on the air right now, and you want to write us, look, if I was still writing specs, I'd write an Abbott Elementary, and that is a hot show. Okay.
Yeah. I just started watching that. Oh my God, I love that.
Oh,
exactly.
Oh,
so, but always, you want to be able to have your independent voice out there. So writing.
How many scripts do you think you need in your portfolio?
At least two.
Okay.
At least two. That's what we'll say. And depending on if you know that you want to just do comedy, do comedies. But we had 1 hour specs as well as comedy. Yeah.
Okay.
So
excellent. I love that.
Because they asked about resumes. I would say
not as important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. Angela's asking, does being a creative consultant on a show, is it a good opportunity that can lead to a showrunner role?
Not necessarily. I don't.
So when you're a creative consultant, usually you are probably in a space where you have been a showrunner, or at least have been like at the co-EP level,
or you can offer some type of creative consultation on a legal show, on a medical show. Sure. It's not necessarily a role that would lead you to showrunner, essentially. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Mark is asking, this is a good question. Since pilots never tell the full story of a series, obviously, how do you get people to see the big picture in that amount of pages? So what's your pilot writing advice?
Oh my gosh, write 50 drafts. I'm just like, no,
right.
And I say that because there's so many voices that literally work to do exactly what you're saying needs to be done, Mark, which is get as much information in it as possible. And between you as the writers, the director who's working on the pilot with you, the producers, the network executives, there's so many different opinions on what is going to be the right recipe to work for an audience. And I think the biggest, go ahead.
I was just going to say the best pilots for me are the ones that have you as an audience member asking questions and can't wait to like what happen next.
Exactly. You leave the audience with a question at the end. You tell a full arc story, but leave them with something more that is
right.
And that is what Netflix does all the time. That's why you guys are letting the 5 seconds run down and going to the next episode. Right.
Yeah. It's like, no, I'm not. Oh, okay. Okay. So we answered that one already. Kelly is asking, from your guys' opinion, what makes a writing room great?
I would say diverse voices
Mhm.
and experiences. I think the best writer's room is when you allow people to share their stories and share their experiences, because you just never know what you can pull into your show based
Yeah.
on people who have lived, right?
Yeah. Like
Right.
diversity of opinion and experiences, because I think that, you know, the times that we're living in, we're so used to like being in our separate corners of everybody, these echo chambers of everybody who agrees with you. And it's like, that's not
Right.
what the good writing room. We used to always have what I call our empire room, which is a real family. I feel like spirited debates. You know, some people may categorize them or, you know, classify them as arguments. I call it spirited debates. But I love when you can get in and like dig in and like, no, this is what Cookie should be doing. I don't want her with Lucius, or she should be, you know, like, and really like, you know, say why, you know, like we feel very passionate about why she should or why she shouldn't, or whatever character you're discussing. And I feel like that's what, when a room is that passionate, your audience is going to be just as passionate. So that's like really cool. Yeah.
Awesome. Anthony's asking, do you guys know if yourself or other showrunners that you are friends with, do they look at sites like Blacklist and Coverfly to pull pilots from, or no?
I know Blacklist for film scripts. I'm not sure that they're actually looking at
They're
those.
not searching.
They're
on
not
the
searching.
sites. Okay.
Yeah. And usually when you get a show gets approved to be on the air, there's a flurry of scripts that are coming from either friends of friends or managers and agents, you know. So not necessarily is what I'll say, but I'm not going to say
executives.
yeah.
Sure. Okay, so Shamika, and I think I'm pronouncing that right. I'm in my first writing fellowship and I've been learning and writing a lot, but now it's about to end. What are some action steps I should take to position me to get staffed moving forward?
Okay. Well, congratulations on being in the fellowship. I think
Yeah.
one of the biggest things is when we were in any program, we were asking whoever is running the fellowship program if they can introduce you to representatives, so managers and our agents, also executives at, you know, whatever platform they're working at. And getting, if you have FaceTime with some executives and they can end up putting you in front of showrunners, you have the potential to hire you. So that's what I would say, representation, as well as, you know, any executives, you know, who are part of the fellowship in some way that can.
And there's usually some sort of, with the fellowships, there's some benefit to having a fellowship writer included on the staff for the show. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I feel like
it makes them look good.
it's important to get FaceTime with showrunners of current series or pilots that you know are.
Yeah. If they can, it actually is of service to them to get you staff. So make that clear.
Awesome. Oh, this is an interesting one. What's the average age in a writer's room currently? Is there room for older staff writers?
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
ranges.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Is there room for older staff writers? Yeah, like without saying anything, Empire, you know what I'm saying? We had some pretty experienced staff writers, you know what I'm saying, on that show. And again, that's what I'm saying, like we don't ever want to be the ones that are making people feel making people feel that because again
experience breeds story.
Like, you've lived life. I would definitely want people like that in my room, because you're going to have stories upon stories and experiences that I want to hear about.
Exactly.
Right. Is your room, when you guys did Bel Air, was it a Zoom room?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just threw that one in there. Okay, so there's a couple of fun ones. I think I'm going to go back up to this one. Okay, and this one's great. But you guys want what?
Answer one that I see from.
Sure.
It says, what advice would both of you give to lower level writers who have opportunities to be an EP showrunner on a TV series?
Yes.
I would say I would be wary of that. I think it's really important to have the experience as a writer rising up through the ranks and building up your ability to be on set and produce is very difficult right now. unfortunately, because of COVID, for young writers to get experience in producing. And it's important to have that experience in order to manage and run a show.
Yeah.
So, you know, if you are a lower level writer who's presented with the opportunity to create and run your own show, I would say have somebody partner with you to supervise and either oversee you, who can actually help you guide you through that process.
Right.
Because that's what's happening now. There's like this pipeline shortage of experienced writers who are starting to run shows, and they're falling apart before they even get on the air because of the lack of experience in producing.
Yeah.
So,
and just make sure that you, you know, like whoever you get to supervise you, you trust them, that there's somebody that you can confide in. And also too, if you do get that opportunity, recognize that you don't know what you don't know, and don't be afraid to ask questions.
Yeah.
And let people know,
Yes.
"Hey, I don't know this.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, I
Uh-huh.
think the best things, you know, like when Lee and Danny, you know, were on Empire, they had never worked in TV before. Hey,
they were not afraid to ask
what do you mean by
questions.
that? You know what I mean? Like, and it's like, it's okay. you
Yes,
know?
exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a good one. People say find your voice. What's your advice on working on your voice as a writer?
Oh, definitely like continuing to like write.
I was gonna say stay writing.
Stay writing, because
your voice is gonna evolve over time.
It's
Like our
gonna
voice
sharpen.
is completely different than what it was.
Oh my gosh. It's like
when we
we'll
first
look back
started.
on scripts, but I actually, you know, even though some of our scripts from back in the day are not, you know, that elevated, I will say we were a lot more fearless because
Right.
You don't know the rules.
You don't know the rules and the expectations of, you know,
like, we don't care.
The notes that are coming from people, you know, that now are just ingrained in us. We were able to just write in a freer way, you know. So I would just say, just keep on, like, once you finish the script, don't literally hold on to that piece for 6 years. You need to be writing the next one, you know, a month later, if not 2 weeks later. You know what I mean?
I think the best example of that too is Michaela Cole. Just write what you feel passionate about, right? What, you know what I'm saying? Don't worry about all these rules, because we're gonna get it there. You know what I'm saying? Like formatting, all that stuff, it's gonna get there. But when it's something that you're passionate about, like that's what I want to see on the page. I want to be able to hear, holy shit, this person, oh my God, I love what they have to say. I can see this character. I know this person. It feels real, you know? So
Right.
Let me add, just in terms of finding your voice, I watched Kinta from Brunson from Abbott Elementary. She said, which I think is really, really cool. When she wrote, you know, when she writes that show, she said, you know, she's really specific about the experience, because being specific about an experience is what makes it more relatable and universal. That's the thing. That's something that they try to tell you in TV, is to like be, you know, every man, you know, America, you know, be real general. And it's like, no, the more specific you get to an experience, the more relatable it is to more people, I think. So that's how you can kind of hone in on your skills and like literally share your experience on the page.
Do you guys have any good stories, or a story about, maybe, I hate to use the word discover because it's probably a lot of hard work to get there, but when you guys maybe found or were introduced to an up and coming writer or a new writer, you know, to the room, that you were like, wow, and like brought them in? Or did you just meet me and now we're
we haven't had that experience ourselves yet.
Okay.
We have.
You're waiting.
Yeah,
everybody, they're waiting.
Exactly.
Okay, so I'm going to end with this one, because this is something that's in your book that you guys talk about a lot, about manifesting, about being a master manifester.
Yeah.
So let's just end this amazing talk, and thank you guys so much. I said guys, I did it again. Thank you both. Okay, everybody, I'm trying to not say guys as a general term for people. Blah. Okay, so let's talk about manifesting. Let's talk about putting your dreams out there and believing and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so for us, we say master manifester because I think it speaks to what Nika said earlier about like how we don't realize how powerful our tongues are and the things that we say. There are various examples in our book on things that we said. Like, for example, I remember reading the script of Revenge. It was called The Revenge of Emily Thorne. And I go to my sister and I say, oh my God, I have to work for the guy who wrote this script.
Mhm.
He's amazing. It's so visual. I see clearly every, scene that he wrote on this script. And then I ended up working as a writer's assistant on that show. She too had an experience where she read a script. She's like, oh my God, I read this script called Bad Mom. We could totally relate. It's our own experience with mommy. Like I got to work for the ladies who wrote this script, and she ended up working for Gabby and Jen. So like there's so many things that like we think it's impossible, but like, you say
but there's the power in that.
Being very intentional, not only with your thoughts, but your words, and realizing that you're speaking things into existence. And we've had so many examples of that throughout our lives, but more specifically, throughout our careers, is we don't take it lightly anymore. So like we're very intentional about what it is that we want to do, what we're going to be on, and how we're moving towards, the next step in our careers. And so I just say that to encourage people, like, be very affirming with your words. It's very powerful, and you can step into, exactly where you want to be because of it.
Without being concerned about how it's going to happen.
Yes, that's the important part.
We used to be so caught up in, I don't know how this is possible. Hey,
we didn't see the steps. You don't have to see the steps. Just have the end. Live in the end. Live in the end of what it looks like. The universe, God, whatever you believe in, whatever your faith is, will get you there. Trust and believe that, because that is the story of our entire lives. I don't know how we, as two little latchkey kids from Tampa, Florida, ended up 3,000 miles away, working in television from, being obsessed with television back in the day. It's a dream come true, and we didn't have any connections out here. So I say that to just envision in your mind what it looks like in the end, and you'll get there.
I mean, I think it can relate back to writing too, because sometimes when you're writing, something comes out on the page where you're like, I don't know where that came from, but I like it. It feels like it's an out of body, like it's flowing through you.
Yeah.
Same feeling where you just have to believe in that. And yeah, I love that. Just feel the end, that place, and not, okay, now how am I going to get there? No,
Exactly.
Love that.
Exactly.
All right. So what are your final words of wisdom, tips, advice for our screenwriting filmmaker community? And before you guys say that, everybody go get their book. I'm telling you, I read it in like 2 days, and it's amazing, not only in information and practical advice and strategy, all of that stuff, but it's just inspiring. And these two women are like you. So you can find a lot of encouragement and inspiration in their story. So go get their book, Living Double.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Final words, I would just say keep writing. And don't let fear get the best of you. In the book we talk about, we have to change our perspective on fear. For us, we made it an acronym. It's fun and exciting when achievement becomes reality. Fear is something that is always going to be there. It's
always going to be with you, no matter what level you are.
Even at the level we are right now, like we're still always scared, but you know what? We got to keep on like walking through it. So I just tell people to just, don't let that, impede on, walking directly into your dreams.
And always be open to collaboration. Like, I think that's the best part about this business, is that we get to collaborate with so many different entities, not just in the writer's room, on set with the actors, in the editing bay, with executives at the networks. Like it's such I think sometimes we forget, because we are so in it, that everybody just wants the best product. Everybody ultimately wants the best product. You know what I mean? So if you remember that as you're going through it, and just remember to enjoy that aspect of it.
Be gracious with, everybody who's contributing to the vision.
Awesome. I mean, this was an absolute joy, one for me to moderate this talk, but just to meet both of you, I not to be like mushy, but I actually feel like I'm a better person now that I've met both of you. Honestly, I really feel like that way. It's been such a joy. And I mean, thank you both for just taking the time out to talk to everybody and tell us your story and encourage everybody. It means a lot.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for having us.
You're welcome.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining us. This will be replayed on our site, I think on Sunday. I think Scott put that in the chat. And take a look at our event page. We're going to have more events coming up, and keep writing.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much.